Young men are lost. We are stuck navigating this wasteland of Fortnite internet butt cheeks and Fortnite internet butt cheeks. At least that's what I've heard from other people. I used to watch Overwatch porn. I mean, we practically spawn in with like a crippling dopamine addiction. I think nowadays it's just common practice for the doctor to hand the newborn an iPad before they even cut the umbilical cord. We're all thrown into this education and career system that kind of worked for our parents. It worked for our grandparents, but now it's just complete ass. Born too early for flying cars, but born too late to buy a house for the cost of a Big Mac. We're stuck wandering around with our melted brains in the sea of NPCs among us. There's all this men's self-improvement advice and these figures, and clearly there's a demand for it. But even then, most young guys are just kind of half-assing it. They don't really know what they're aiming for. The reality of the situation is just that young men, and just men in general, don't know who they truly are, operating through their persona, which is just a mask created by their ego. Your Honor, it was not me who said the N-word on Xbox Live 338 times. It was merely my persona. And remaining in this state means you're running the risk of never finding your true self, which results in remaining on the NPC path. Not even to mediocrity, but to just straight inferiority, because nowadays the average is below baseline of what a human should be. But for those who are able to generate their true identity and tap into their purpose, means they can become the highest version of themselves. The version of yourself that is able to become extremely successful, confident, attractive, and happy. Not only that, but it almost instantly breaks you out of the NPC matrix, which basically means you become better than like 90% of people. I thought I knew who I was back in middle school. I was the skinny gamer. This identity was reflected both by me and by those around me, so why would I question it? I honestly thought I was just born to be like that. So my life just involved Call of Duty trick shots, stepsisters, and going to school, where I acted like, and thus was treated like, the skinny nerd. Now, I still had some sense of ambition. I mean, I was going to be a pro gamer YouTuber after all. I had a whopping 500 subscribers. I know some people are gonna be so mad about that, gonna be like, you don't get it. I actually am really good at the game. I actually am gonna make it on Twitch streams. I have 10 concurrent viewers. But all of this just stemmed from a cheap dopamine addiction, an escapism addiction, and a complete lack of self-awareness, both in myself and what the world had to offer besides my boy Jordy clapping. Eventually, video games was replaced with weightlifting, which of course is just more productive and healthy in general, but it all stemmed from insecurity. I want to get big, so girl touch pee-pee. Which honestly, when you're starting out, isn't a bad thing. Motivation is motivation. I just lacked any actual purpose beyond these surface level achievements. So for the next few years, my identity was literally just the gym. It's what I thought about at school, at work, and while I was there. But still, I wasn't aware that I didn't know who I actually was. And this continued on until I finally got absolutely checked by the 2020 lockdown. I was barely working like 8 hours a week at my job, and every gym in the city shut down. And almost instantly, I reverted back to playing video games in my infamous 10-tab FAP sessions. Bro, I even bought this $20 helper, and I didn't even like what I was doing. I didn't enjoy the games. I didn't enjoy the nuts. I was just desperately trying to escape reality, because I finally realized I don't know who I am. This identity crisis made me feel like a shell of a person. I was scared, confused, and ashamed of myself. And when the gyms reopened and I got back to working and training, that feeling didn't leave. Sure, I could finally get back to going to the gym and recording gym vlogs, but the unconscious became conscious. I was now self-aware. I was experiencing exactly what Maxwell Maltz talks about in his book Psycho-Cybernetics, where the self-image does not align with the ideal self, and thus that is when insecurity is formed. My current self, thus my subconscious, thus my actions, did not represent who I wanted to be, and it resulted in deep shame and insecurity. This constant feeling of knowing I was meant for more, but not what that more was, or who I was. And I finally started trying things, you know, 75 hard, no FAP streaks, reading here and there. And once I began steadily trying to improve myself, I started getting glimpses of my true self, or at least who I wanted to become. But even then, it still felt like I was grasping at straws, that something was missing in me that all of these self-improvement guys had. Until finally, through a lot of trial and error, I finally found the 5 steps to become your true self, which will grant you the ability to become your highest self and, you know, get the hose to wash your supercar that you got with all your money, so you can go pick up the hose. And step 1 is to stop identifying with thoughts. We navigate our lives with a constant internal monologue, narrating every single event and emotion that we experience. And what our mind does by default is it identifies with each and every thing that pops in. And the more it cements that identity, even if the inputs are negative, which they often are. One of the core realizations in mindfulness, consciousness, meditation, is you realize that this internal dialogue is not you, and that we can simply pull back and observe these thoughts and emotions, and they will pass without rewiring our brain negatively. Meditating is what granted me this ability. It wasn't like this one session ego death crazy realization. Rather, it was building up this mental muscle of mindfulness. And this heightened awareness would carry into my days. And since I was more aware, I was more self-aware. And thus I would notice and observe all my thoughts and actions. And I would realize what I truly liked and what I truly didn't like about myself. And as you do this over time, it will lead you further and further to becoming your ideal self. If you're interested in trying this at all, just consider checking out my free 5-day guided meditation series in the description. And throughout this process, you will finally conquer your ego, and then you will realize the ego is a great servant, just a shit master. Step 2 is to widen your lens. We navigate life with this extremely zoomed in lens. This narrow view kills our chances of learning, opportunity, and self-development in general. And it is only when we're able to zoom out that we gain all this new information. So we can see everything and then zoom back into what we truly want with all of this newfound knowledge backing us. What this means is regaining your childlike curiosity, dive into your interests, and be overly willing to learn. The student mindset is what will expose you to all these different building blocks, and then you get to choose what to craft your identity with. But this also means we have to stop overloading our brains with cheap dopamine. All the gaming and TikTok boobies will not only ensure that you won't have much time to widen your lens, but that you won't have the dopamine necessary to drive you. The books, courses, podcasts, videos that will align the steps on your path is already out there. It's up to you to start exploring and find it. Step 3 is don't copy, take intelligent inspiration. I mean, we're all guilty with this. We find someone we just really fuck with and we meet ride them instead of identifying what exactly we like about them and trying to implement it into our own true self. When you run around just copying Tate, Hamza, or even myself, you're merely adopting a persona. Even though it's obviously more productive than doing absolutely nothing, eventually you will reach a point where it is a hindrance and not a help to you. It is great to look up to people, it is great to consume their content, but you must remain mindful of what you want out of it and consistently challenge your own beliefs to make sure everything aligns with your true self. Step 4 is to find a purpose and then the goal. Now I'm gonna assume that you probably already have this loose purpose of developing yourself, but the more and more clarity you are able to gain on your purpose, the more it will be able to propel you in life. So ask yourself what comes from this purpose and why you desire that, and then completely flip it around. What is your antithesis? The life and identity that results in you not improving, not finding your true self, and never achieving your highest self. And just kind of dwell on that, man. Just think about how ass that'd be. You'll find that sometimes remembering what you're running from is more motivating than remembering what you're running towards. And obviously the best case scenario is you know both. Now, once you have some clarity on all that, you need a goal. The goal. Why'd I hold up a 2? And this goal needs to be as specific as you can possibly make it. An example Napoleon Hill uses in Think and Grow Rich is that picture the exact number down to the cents in your bank account, and then visualize this as well as the version of yourself in this scenario that was able to make it happen. Get as vivid as you possibly can and see it as if it already happened, and then feel the emotions that you would feel if you achieved it. So this is going to sway your current identity more and more towards that ideal version of yourself you're thinking of, which is going to result in you taking more and more action directly towards that goal because your subconscious is led by your identity. So the more you shift your identity, the more you shift all the mechanisms within your mind into working for you instead of sabotaging yourself like you probably do now. Which means that this is the practice that orients 90 to 95% of your mind towards that goal. This is the exact process discussed in both Think and Grow Rich and Psycho-Cybernetics, and it's so effective that I actually systemized it for an entire chapter in my upcoming self-development masterclass. Finally, step number 5, if you actually want to fully become your true self, then you have to acknowledge all of the very things you are currently suppressing. You must implement your shadow. All of us have these parts of us that we don't think aligns with our true self, so we try as hard as we can to resist it and reject it, just trying to create a blind spot in our minds. The key is not to kill our shadow, but to assimilate with it. This process has 3 steps. Step 1 is to accept your shadow. It is part of us whether we like it or not. Step 2 is to learn about your shadow, and this also requires mindfulness. Pay consistent attention to the thoughts, the fantasies, and the impulses that the shadow introduces into your consciousness. And once you finally reach the point where you understand exactly what your shadow is, what the desires are, you have to start negotiating with it. Find out what is and isn't useful about these urges and desires. Once again, meditation is great for this, link in the description, as well as journaling to yourself, because the more you are self-aware, the more you are shadow aware. You'll be surprised how you can take a seemingly dark desire or insecurity and actually turn it into a force for good. An example of this is someone who just has all these dark desires to be a degenerate, go out, hook up with girls or watch a lot of porn, and maybe being like, hey Shadow, I know you want a lot of attention and validation from girls, but you know what, we'll get more of that if we improve ourselves and become super high value and successful. And the Shadow's like, yo, this guy kind of spitting. Very basic example, but if you can figure out what your shadow is and negotiate with it, you will unlock some of the most powerful motivating factors you've ever had. So to figure out who you truly are, gain the ability to become your highest self and escape the NPC matrix. Stop identifying with your thoughts, widen your lens, don't be a copycat, find a purpose and then the goal, and implement your shadow. And once you figure all that out and you have a goal, then you need to find the system that allows you to beat everyone else in the game of life. Achieve exactly what you want to achieve. So consider clicking this video right here where I describe exactly how to do that through gamification. And you know, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Get that 5-day guided meditation. Subscribe to my newsletter because I'm about to get mad consistent with putting out self-development content on there that you won't really be seen anywhere else because it's me writing. And that's pretty much it, man. If you don't do these things, then you lose.